The 2024 PFA Player of the Year, Phil Foden. Remarkably still only 24 years of age, his talents have been lighting up the Premier League for nearly a decade now. But what happens if you move him to Manchester City's 2006 side? What can he achieve with them in that earlier era? And what a different era it was. Long before the arrival of huge investment, they'll be operating in a slightly different playing field. The 2006 season would see City finish in 15th place, just 9 points ahead of Birmingham and relegation. What hasn't changed though is Phil himself. This is the exact same version of him who appeared on Football Manager 2024, a season in which he'd registered 39 goals and assists in 53 appearances. Technically, he's an elite player with top-class passing, dribbling and overall technique. Similarly, he's got that great burst of pace which should allow him to capitalise on those bigger areas of space he'll enjoy with this City side. But I definitely wasn't lying when I said this side doesn't enjoy quite the same degree of talent. In the centre of defence, he's probably more used to lining up alongside the likes of Vincent Kompany or Ruben Dias. For this season, it will be Sylvain Distin. Likewise up front, there'll be no Erling Haaland or Sergio Aguero. He'll be hoping to create as many opportunities as possible for Darius Vassell. During 4 seasons at the club, the ex-England international would never score more than 8 Premier League goals in a season. Maybe the addition of an elite number 10 will improve those numbers. Tactically, we're going to line up with a 4-3-2-1. With the squad we have available, I think it's best to deploy Foden centrally, rather than out wide. With 3 solid defensive midfielders behind him, we've given Phil a free role. He's been encouraged to get forwards, dribble and shoot as much as possible. Let's move through the season and see what happens. And it would be a debut to remember against Middlesbrough. 2 goals in the game secured a win, the second one coming in rather funny fashion, as the England international capitalises on an error by none other than Gareth Southgate. The goals would continue to arrive, and like in reality, they had a lot of variety. All he needs is just a yard of space on the edge of the box, and what a finish this is. The game would finish with a 1-1 draw. So far, things are going reasonably well. Foden's hit the ground running, and really contributed well in the attack. Next up would be a visit to Sam Allardyce's Bolton Wanderers. They've got a few superstars of their own on the field, JJ Okocha and Hidetoshi Nakata. Foden's goal ensured a valuable point on the road. Not just a goal scorer, but a creator too. November would see the first Manchester derby of the season, a great 1-2 with Andy Cole, before the match finished in another tie. At the midway stage, City is sitting in 12th. Defensively, they're looking pretty solid. Offensively, things could still improve a little. Let's briefly look at how they did in the cup competitions. The League Cup campaign would be short-lived after a disastrous early round elimination to Huddersfield Town. The FA Cup third round would see a visit to Brentford. Like Man City, this is a very different Brentford side. Long before the Thomas Frank era began, they're relying on the likes of Brett Ormerod up front. Unsurprisingly, City would advance. As they continued to chase silverware, it would be a trip to the east half of London. Once again, Foden would find himself on the score sheet, converting well inside the area. Foden truly came to life in this tournament. Another defensive calamity is capitalised on by Robbie Fowler. Phil's goal helped his side on to a 3-1 victory over 2 legs. The quarter-final actually saw one of my favourite goals of his from the entire season. With Sibierski drifting out wide, it created so much space for our man to attack the ball from midfield. West Brom would be beaten, but an all-Manchester semi-final would end in defeat. An impressive run though, where Foden up to that point scored in every single round. Let's move back to the Premier League and see what twists and turns lie in store for the second half of the season. The England international's goal involvement would keep coming. Darius Vassell does a great job finding his teammate in the middle, and despite Lehmann's save, he's helpless on the rebound. In the end, a 2-goal lead was squandered, with Robin van Persie scoring an 87th minute equaliser. They'd bounced back swiftly, and watching this one, you could be mistaken for thinking you're viewing Pep Guardiola's City. Great passing, and a lovely finish. High-flying Charlton were up next. At the midway point, they were sitting 8th. A Foden brace meant all 3 points would return to the City of Manchester Stadium. Before the season started, I thought it would be Vassell who'd capitalise from Phil's arrival, but it really turned out to be Antoine Sibierski. The French striker managed 14 to Darius' 4. The England international's final contribution of the season would arrive in a 3-1 defeat to Chelsea. A nice ball into Robbie Fowler, and despite the close marking, he can convert. Phil Foden enjoyed an impressive season. In all, he'd contribute 29 goals and assists in 44 appearances. His form in the Cup is where he truly stood out, against all the odds, firing his side to a semi-final. He finished the campaign with a shot conversion rate of 15.7%. Of the 44 games he played, he'd win 15 of them. Not bad considering he didn't have the greatest supporting cast. His 18 league goals were enough to finish 7th in the Golden Boot race. As mentioned earlier, Sibierski really stepped up and got himself on the score sheet too. But where did they finish in the table? It would be an 11th place finish. With Foden, they'd improved their points total by 5, along the way scoring 2 more goals and conceding 6 less. It's quite interesting how similarly to reality, they had such a close goal difference. Not being the highest scorers, but showing decent defensive qualities. With just a few more goals scored, some of those 15 draws could easily have been turned into wins. Phil Foden is amongst the top players in English football. His presence in this City side has definitely been a significant factor in them winning the last 4 Premier League titles. As he grows further into his maturity, I'm sure his club will rely more and more on him to help drive this squad to further success.